exotics valet at some of them, but we did have Bentleys and we had a few Lamborghinis, a number of Ferraris, a lot of really high-end cars that would just be in the parking lot. Lady came through one day because I was working at the cheese counter and asked me where the crackers were at. And without skipping a beat, I said, well, ma'am, you're in name of the city here. We're surrounded by crackers. And my coworker did a spit take. My boss coughed because he couldn't believe that I actually had said that. But then I just kind of smiled and I said, well, actually, there's some, right kind of where your knees are at. And then there's more on the next aisle over. I'm like, here, why don't I walk you over to it? But that was my sense of humor. And I kind of did that sort of thing all the time when I was there. Thankfully, my boss afterwards was like, dude, you can't do that. And I'm like, why? She had no idea what I was talking about. I mean, I wasn't wrong, but yeah, it's super stressful. I have another friend who's a chef and working in hot kitchens. He's drinking yellow wine. Yeah, honestly, like working in hot kitchens, you have to be really good with working in stressful situations, and especially like hot kitchens. They're no joke. When I was working at that sashi place, we had a yakitori grill that was in back. I was working in front of 4 really hot burners. There was another giant stove just to the right of it with another, I think, 12 large burners. There were 4 deep fryers kind of down at the end. And oh yeah, I had a salamander kind of right above me. Salamander is a broiler, but anyways. And so yeah, surrounded by heat. Oh yeah, and they also had multiple pots of boiling water. So it was hot and humid every dinner service. And I, being kind of the overachiever, was like, oh, it wasn't just, I'm going to show up and, kind of do prep and then call it good. I was like, okay, I would get there and, at some point in the early afternoon to start doing prep work and everything. And then I would work until basically closing. Yeah, that was a really, really rough semester, to be honest. Because I was gone, gosh, I think I was at the restaurant like 4 nights a week, including Saturdays. I only saw Mrs. Hueso on, I think it was Sundays. Yeah. That was really it, just because our schedules were so different that I only saw her, it was Sundays. That was the only time. That was a really, really tough semester. So, for some people, they thrive and they do really, really well in it. I mean, I have friends that I went to school with that are actively working and doing really well. I have one friend who's an amazing pastry chef. She just started at a place in Atlanta. I've talked about her before. Itty Bitty is what I used to call her because I'm a 6'3" Hulk and she's like, I think 4'10" or something like that. But she could throw down like you wouldn't believe. I've got nothing but love and respect for her. So, it's a very long and convoluted answer to your question, Rev, but yeah. So, working in the restaurant food industry, not work per se as like a professional chef or anything like that, but with my knowledge and experience, like I've done catering, I've helped out with stuff. Inevitably, Like, I get called on, oh, you know how to cook, blah, 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 and, you know, for different things. So it's kind of, sometimes it's a double-edged sword, to be honest. Because, and it's part of the reason why I'm as insistent when it comes to patronizing the arts. Oh, good. I'm glad you're enjoying the story time. But yeah, when it comes to like musicians or artists or people who are creative as their way of living, like I'm very much insistent on making sure that if I'm like, hey, would you do X for me? Make sure that they get paid. Mostly because of how often when people hear that, you know, I know a thing or three about cooking, that they're like, oh, you should totally cook for me. Like it's kind of like a throwaway skill or something like that. And I'm like, well, if you can afford, you know, what my catering rate would be, then okay, sure. So it's kind of a pet peeve of mine, because inevitably, you know, I find the takers. I don't know how. So yeah, that's why I kind of feel like that. And why I really feel like, you know, hey, if you're gonna, you know, listen to a band's music, for instance, you should buy the music. Or what would actually be better for the band is buy their merch, since that's more likely to get them, you know, money directly. Or buy both. Go to the shows, absolutely, if you can, if they're in your area. So we need a Twitch homie party at Decay's house where we can all stuff our faces. See, I'm absolutely down for that, Lumpy. Like, yeah, exactly. If you have a professional skill, if it's a skill that somebody wants to take advantage of, then you should be able to be fairly compensated for your skills. I mean, I don't, you know, I would sometimes, like, it got to one point where somebody was like, oh, you know, I hear you're really good. You should totally cook for me. I'm like, well, what do you do? And they're like, oh, I'm a tax preparer. Oh, well, you should totally do my taxes for free. And they're like, wait, why? And I'm like, well, if we're exchanging professional, you know, skills, then, you know, exactly. It's buy the stuff that puts the money in the band's pockets that allows them to continue to produce their creative endeavors that bring joy to your life. It's a very flowery way of saying buy their stuff. Like, honestly, okay, so here's an excellent example, right? Mr. Rav here, frontman for Ravenous. Their shirt selection right now is friggin' amazing. Like, they're awesome. Like, I genuinely want one of each of them. They won't fit me, but I do want one of every one of them because they're amazing designs right now. Like, seriously, Rav. Like, I'm gonna have to buy a couple, like, cut out the graphics and just sew them onto a fluffy... Dude, I wear 5X. The largest size I could order off your site was a 3X. I'm just saying. Because I'm extra fluffy. Alright. We've got a full tray. That is looking excellent. I'm thinking I'm going to need to add just a touch of fat to it just to kind of aid in the browning. And then we'll hit it with a little bit of salt, but then that's it. Because we still got the stuff from the marinade of the chicken that's going to get mixed up into it. Yeah. And, okay, Rav, we'll talk about why most producers of t-shirts don't offer shirts always in fluffy sizes. We'll get to that. It has to do with ergonomics. Specifically, the 98% rule. This was a lesson that I learned in product design back when I was doing industrial design. That most products that are designed in the world are designed for the 98th percentile. So people... there's been extensive studies done on the sizes of people, be it male, female, whatever, doesn't matter. So most products are designed for people that fall within to the 98% of sizes of things, okay? That 99-100 are people that fall into either larger or smaller, taller, shorter, fatter, thinner than what the mass of the population is. I happen to fall into the 99th percentile in terms of my size, which is why most places don't offer things like, you know, shirts in my size specifically, because there's a very small segment of the population that it would fit. So from a business standpoint, it doesn't make sense to pay the additional setup and resizing in order to produce something that you're not going to sell very much of. You know, at least from a business standpoint. I understand this. This is something I've